So you know how much I love Italian as a language. You know that I'm an eternal learner of Italian and I love Italy and I love Italy so much. What I think is interesting about Italy, one of the things I think is so interesting about Italy linguistically is how diverse it is. And I don't think a lot of people outside, especially in the US, I don't think that a lot of people appreciate or recognize that. And we look at Italian as this monolithic language and the language of the people of Italy, but we know, you and I know, and I hope our listeners know that's not the case necessarily. I would love it if you could give us a brief overview, an understanding basically of the differences and the similarities that we have between Piemontese and the standard Italian or Lombardo and the standard Italian, what makes them distinct from one another?
Okay, thank you for the question. I'll try to sum it up. First of all, geographically, for these two languages, we are in the northwest of the country. Piemontese borders with southern France, whereas Lombard borders with Switzerland to the north, and it's in the middle of northern Italy. And also, if for I'm sure that our listeners, your listeners, would know, but Lombard is also spoken in Switzerland, in the so-called Italian-speaking Switzerland.
Mhm.
And what are the main differences?
I'm gonna open my map while you're talking so I can
Okay,
be
okay.
in the same neighborhood as you.
Check. So the first difference that comes to my mind is that in both in Piemontese and in Lombardo, we use verbal pronouns. So how can I explain them easily? In the same way that in English, canonically, you cannot omit the pronoun when describing an action. For example, I do, he does, they are. In the same way, there are pronouns in Piemontese and in Lombard too that cannot be omitted. So, for example, in Italian, I am is io sono, and in Piemontese is mi i tu. So um, it's almost can be hard to perceive it, but there is like an I between me and sun. So the mi I sun. The I you need to write it every time. You don't need to write ni, but you need to write I. I think it's like in French, but I'm not proficient in French, but I think there is, and then you say the verb. And in Lombard, it changes a bit, and it's ni a son. I'll say it again. Sorry, ni a son. And I had to say it again because the other main difference between this is like more of a phonetic difference between the Western variety of Lombard and Italian is that in Milan, somehow around the 1700s, they developed nasal vowels like in French, but I think they have more than French.
Oh.
So there is an in, I think, ni as well. Yeah, basically every vowel has a nasal vowel too when the vowel is before an N. That is a bit more maybe
Oh my
complicated than necessary,
god.
but it gave me the chance. My mistake gave me the chance to say this, and sometimes it's hard to do it properly. So this is what proficient speakers they know how to do, whereas I just sound funny probably, but hey, I'm learning how to speak this.
Mhm.
And another example with these verbs is the you go. So tu vai in Italian and in Piemontese is ti it vas. So again, the verbal pronoun it, and the in Lombard, so the pronoun in Lombard te. And I don't know if you could tell too, because
Mhm.
of my voice in general and because I'm speaking in English, but the A sound in Piemontese is not the same as Italian. So in Italian, we have the sort of very open A that I think it's quite known around the world as well, that we say our A's like very open. Whereas in Piemontese is the A sound of standard Southern English received pronunciation when they say words like bath or calm and that kind of back in
Mm,
the throat A.
yeah.
So that's the standard A. However, though, this sort of A sound is getting lost with from the 1950s onwards. It's getting more Italianized. Another difference we can find with this other example, and in uh, Piemontese, it's iom a parlo.
Io
So
parlo.
yes, and is both singular and plural. So that yeah, I wanted to announce basically that the masculine, because then there is the difference. The masculine forms of plural nouns is the same mostly of the singular ones. There are exceptions. It depends if the that's the general rule, but there are a few exceptions, like if the noun, the singular one, ends with an L, then the plural is with a J that you read as E, if it
Hmm.
makes sense. Yeah, that is more like curiosities to look up. Uh, and whereas in Lombard, it's like irregular and the plural is omen. However, many words, and I would say the general rule again is that the for the masculine, the plural is the same as the singular, whereas for the feminine in Lombard, for example, donna is woman, donna in Italian, and the plural in Lombard will be don. So we take out a letter, the final vowel, and yeah, again, general rule that I can think of is this way. Whereas in Piemontese, it's closer to standard Italian because we change the final A or an E. For example, donna in Piemontese is fumna, and the plural is fumne.
It's a completely different word too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's very similar to Sicilian femmino.
Mm.
It's more like fumna and fumna, yes.
Oh, no.
Again, words that I can think of. Other differences that I wanted to say is that there are, this probably would be the first one that I, standard Italian speaker, learner, would notice is that in these two languages, we have two vowels that are not present whatsoever in Italian, but also Spanish, but they are in French and German and other languages around the world, I bet. The first one is the U, and the second one is the O sound. So, how they are written, again, this is a complicated story because there is no official standard for Lombard. But traditionally, I would say the U vowel represents the U sound, whereas in Piemontese, it's the diphthong EU represents E, whereas in Lombard, they like to make it a bit more complicated. So I think it's OEU altogether makes the E sound.
Oh my gosh.
If it makes sense. Yes.
Mhm.
They like it a bit like that. Or different influences. Another difference, and then I don't know, maybe I'll think about others as we go. But another difference is that in both of these languages, but mostly in Lombard, that is to say that we have more in Lombard of these, we have phrasal verbs too. And unfortunately, it's not something that they teach us when we are struggling to in school to learn about the many ways to use who or take or other verbs in
Mhm.
English. They
Yeah.
do not teach us like, hey, we have them here too. For example, for example, the verb fa means fare, so to do, to make, and passu means to create, to build, to run, to create, but also to lie about something, to mislead. That's the correct word. Another one is which means to draw, to design something.
Okay.
Inventar means to think about something or to create again. And these verbs, they had an influence on the regional Italian we speak here, and then therefore to the standard Italian altogether. Because I would think about, for example, in Lombard, in standard Italian would be fare fuori, and that means to cancel or to nullify. This is how we use it, the created version of that.
Mhm.
And this is very used in Italian, especially in everyday conversation, but also I think in TV series as well, like about crime or police. They use that word a lot too.
Oh my god. That.
But there are many more.